Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Amina Husain. I'm Assistant Professor at the Department of English and Modern European and Asian Languages at Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti Language University. And today's lecture is on restoration comedies. So in my earlier video, I discussed and deliberated upon the historical, political, and also religious background of Restoration Age. And today I want to discuss the Restoration comedy or comedy of manners. Now, as we all know, that Restoration Age was the time when all the repression, of the desires and everything, reached to a violent excess. I think that Restoration comedy seems to encapsulate the spirit of the time very well. So Restoration comedy is also famously known as the comedy of manners. This comedy expressed a reaction against Puritanism, as I mentioned, and the sexual repression of it that had attempted to enforce, and especially during the interregnum. So fashionable intrigues and sex, marriage and adultery were treated with cynicism, with a worldly wit and a sense of comedy of life. The characters in plays no doubt owed much to the courtiers, the wits, the men about town, as well as to ladies of fashion, citizen wives and country girls. Restoration comedy, according to Moody and Lovett, and I quote, is a genuine reflection of the temper, if not of the actual life of the upper class of the nation. As such, it has the sociological as well as the literary interest. The Restoration comedy was shaped both by native and French influences. It drew its inspiration from the native tradition which had flourished before the closing of theatres in 1642. It was also influenced by continental writers, especially by Molière and Spaniards. It reflected closely the dissolute court life of the period. There was a community of spirit which led to an interest in French comedy. Molière gave English dramatists the brilliant ideas of plot, of some fine examples of comic characterization. The foreign influences, remarks Edward Elbert, and I quote, blended with the tradition already strongly established and assisted the natural process of change demanded by changing temper of the age, but they were transformed into something essentially English and contemporary. Thus, the comedy of Molière, who was French, was changed into a harder, more closely knit form, which lacked the warmth and depth of insight of the original, unquote. So the comedy of manners is really conspicuous for intellectual and refined tone. It is devoid of romantic passions and sentiments, and it replaces emotion by wit and poetry by clear, concise prose. The play shows a close and satirical observation of life and manners. The comedy of manners recall the works of Ben Jonson. It is, of course, realistic, and the simple aim of this comedy was to really show the manners of the upper ranks of the society. They're shown with unemotional frankness, absolutely candid. The aristocratic, refined society which it represents, is absolutely fashionable. It does expose the follies, but these are the follies of the refined gentleman and not of the low characters. Everything coarse and vulgar is eschewed. A whore is called a mistress, and a pimp is a friend, and a cuckold maker becomes a gallant. So the cult of refinement is carried to an extreme. It depicts a small world which has a distinct territory of its own. The fashionable parks and the coffee houses of London of the Charles II's time, its setting is provided by public parks, fashionable clubs. You have taverns, the drawing rooms of the aristocratic and leisured class of the time. And of course, the most important thing is the sex is treated with utmost frankness in the comedy of manners, and the intimate relationship with men and women is out in the open. And the people also try to look at love as purely personal matter, and marriage somewhat gained the prominence of some kind of a social performances. And the writers of the comedy of manners really does dissected the complications of these relationship. And the restoration comedy is then just not is a feast of entertainment, but then it's also, I believe, an expose of a society, its hypocrisy, the facade that it carries on itself. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening.